episode of Season 3 of Esoteric Science Roundtable. And one of the first things I would like to begin with is something I'm going to probably continue to keep doing for the next few weeks as things start ramping up towards some of the local elections, to keep in the minds of the folks that view this show and other like-minded shows about Mike Hansen running for county constable for Precinct 4, and the fact that he's going to need volunteers to help him with signs and other aspects of his campaign. And if anyone that is interested in taking the time and efforts to help Mike out, certainly just maybe an hour or so of your time, if you can spare it, would be something to contribute to his campaign effort. And I would encourage anyone that's interested to take down these numbers, and also we'll try to make a quick mention towards the end of the show as well to remind folks about Mike Hansen running for county constable and all the good work that he is doing to bring to attention a lot of local issues of interest and try to kind of hold accountable the elected officials and our public servants. And the type of person that Mike is certainly the type of person I would like to see in elected office, and anyone that knows Mike, I'm sure, would echo that sentiment as well. So again, please consider what you can do to help out Mike if you are able. As far as this evening's discussion, I would like to discuss a term called Antahkarana. And this is a Sanskrit-based term that refers to essentially a process. And one of the terms that we can use to describe this process is a science of synthesis, in that this science of synthesis, or this process, allows individuals to merge aspects of themselves with a higher aspect of our creation, of our humanity. And this Antahkarana, so-called, unfolds through individuals, but it also has a group component as well, and that this synthesis can take place in the synthesizing of an individual person when they merge certain aspects of themselves, and it can also carry over to an aspect of synthesis in the sense of a group synthesis, in which certain energies from the individuals in the group are blended and merged and melded together so that a group tone may be emitted from that group work. Now, another term for the Antahkarana, so-called, is the rainbow bridge. And when we keep in mind the fact that light is broken down into 7 distinct colors, if we put white light through a prism, we see there are 7 distinct differentiations. And this is a reflection of how energy manifests and makes its way down into physical manifestation. And we see in creation blends of different things, blends of color, blends of sizes, shapes, all of these things that come together to make our creation, to make this process of creation. And we can, again, follow 7 main streams of energy back to one primary source, and this ability to merge with this primary source can be accomplished through several means, but one of which, again, the topic for this evening's discussion, is this Antahkarana. And the idea that the 7 different streams of energy are all merged together in an understanding relationship within the individual, and that these 7 rays, so-called, these 7 distinct streams of energy, again, find their way into manifestation in an individual or through a nation. There are various ways in which this energy demonstrates itself in cyclic fashion. And so when we consciously meld these various energies together with will and focus, then this is part and parcel of this process called Antahkarana. This science of synthesis and the idea of synthesizing different aspects of ourselves. If we take into consideration that we have in our lower personality nature an energy aspect that animates the physical body, an emotional aspect that gives us the capacity and the ability for desires and the capacity for love and things of that nature that are based, in a sense, in the emotional nature. Also the mind nature that allows us to understand both concrete and then abstract concepts as well. And so in the lower aspect, in our personality, so-called, we have these three aspects merging, and then there is an intermediary aspect that is commonly referred to as a soul. And the soul is that synthesizing or mediating principle between our personality and between our spiritual nature. And between the lower threefold manifestation of the energy, the emotion, and the mind, there is a higher reflection of both mind in its abstract sense, emotion in its purest sense, in the sense of pure reason, and then the will aspect, which hinges on, again, the point where all of these streams of force merge into one point of origin. And so again, this synthesis within the form is described by this process that allows this merging to take place. And this is activated by an act of the will, and then it's moved forward by this intent, this focused intent. And so a point of tension is set up between this lower nature and our higher, more divine aspects. And so as we create this point of tension between these two aspects of ourselves, this allows for a merging to take place. And this is, again, something that falls under this heading of this synthetic approach. Let's see. So this also considering the aspect of this merging between these aspects of ourselves, there are many different ways in which to merge these different aspects of ourselves. And the simplest aspects of it begin with just aspiration, prayer, contemplation, and then ultimately meditation is one aspect that would allow for a union, so-called. The idea of union is reflected in the term yoga. Yoga meaning union. And again, this concept of a yoga of synthesis or a science of synthesis is a process, a scientific process in which we can recover this relationship, this point of tension between this higher and lower aspect. Now, this point of tension setup allows for this exchange to facilitate itself. And this, again, this point of tension, if we consider how this keeps us in a point of focused and ready, alert thinking, and keeps the mind sharp, and keeps the mind in line with this focus, with this process. And so this is, again, the point of tension that we consider makes this possible because we keep this point of focus or intention as a constant state of vigilant awareness and watchfulness. And so this allows for this process to be a building, constructive process. Again, considering that we can work on an individual basis through this concept of yoga or union and use a means of meditation. And there are various aspects of meditation that will allow us to synthesize the component aspects of ourselves or to merge our inner nature with the higher aspects of ourselves. And different individuals are going to find perhaps that one may be suited and right for them and others perhaps not. So that's to prescribe one over the other is not necessarily my intent, but to tie into the relation of this science, one particular yoga, and that is what is known as Agni Yoga, or again the yoga of synthesis. Agni is a personification of the aspect of our universe that animates all things. Agni is also known as the god of fire in the Hindu pantheon, being that aspect of our one God. And considering that this fire fuels and animates all living things, it is that spark that animates all living things, and it's the fuse that burns during the duration of any living thing's life. And so we all tie into this firing energy, And it's even spoken of in the Bible that our God is a consuming fire. And so once we understand that animating capacity, that fire that fuels all of creation, then we can tap into that aspect, and that allows a merging in a very focused and direct sense. In many instances, fire is represented in many religions as a negative aspect of a spiritual endeavor, or that fire is a burning, is a hell, is a bad thing. That's in its fuller appreciation and understanding. Fire is more considered a purifactory or purification medium, and that fire burns away what is unneeded and unnecessary, so that we can emphasize and hone what is pure and right and proper. And so again, burning away with fire and fusing with the highest aspects of fire are part and parcel of this science of synthesis. And getting into a conscious point of tension with that divine flow is the means by which that's achieved. Keeping in mind that it is a building process and it has to take place over time, and then it becomes a point of familiarity, and one can readily achieve that union through meditation, and then it builds in and accumulates and becomes more of an active factor during our waking day consciousness. And when we're at work or driving in a car or what have you, we still retain some aspect of that fiery nature in our minds and focused within our intent. Now, this is, in all actuality, more so something that's going to unfold itself for humanity for the future upcoming generations. But we have one foot in that opportunity right now, and we always have to set up the patterns and ideas for what is to manifest itself on the physical plane. And so the idea that these different aspects of yoga or union or synthesis are making their way back into the forefront of human thinking is certainly no mistake, and it's certainly very timely to the opportunities that we have right now at our disposal. And I wanted to try to tie this aspect of synthesis of form with different cyclic unfoldings. And if we consider that, generally speaking, there is about a 2,000-year period in which the sun stays apparently within different signs of the zodiac. And so since it is passing through Pisces and finishing its Piscean dispensation, keeping in mind also the fish symbolism that we see quite pregnant within a lot of religious dispensations that tie into that, we move forward, and then we find the water bearer, the Aquarian age, that again ties us into this concept of synthesis. This water being poured out by this water bearer is water that all individuals will partake of. It's not something that is designated for one particular stream of humanity. And also this pouring out of water also is a representation symbolically of the melding of these distinct energy types that I spoke of earlier, these 7 rays, so-called, and how they find themselves melding into one outflowing or outpouring effort, a group synthetic effort that is based on the will aspect of our creation and our humanity. And so this outpouring that we have an opportunity to make use of is more so something that is going to be more relevant and more meaningful for future upcoming generations. But in spite of that, it is very important in my estimation to get the ideas in the minds of men so that these ideals can shape up to the highest potential, and so that they can, when they do find manifestation on the physical plane, they can be a thing of rare beauty. And that is certainly my hope and my intent by bringing this information out to the public, is that it can be used for the betterment of our humanity and the uplifting of all individuals. So getting the patterns together, getting the energy merged for something that will only give us greater opportunity down the road is, I think, certainly a worthwhile endeavor and effort. Now, considering also the synthesizing group aspect, this is part and parcel of a coming together of energies that relates itself to a larger unfolding of energy that is at a planetary level. And so we see that the consciousness that indwells this globe is also finding means of achievement and means of unfolding and means of greater expansion of awareness that it is taking opportunity to develop and make manifest in its experience. And so as we tie ourselves to that understanding and build in some understanding of that opportunity, we can take our place as lighted, excuse me, as lighted, activated individuals that are sharing and exchanging in these opportunities for expanding and growth. And that this greater energy will only uplift and carry along with it our humanity and the lower kingdoms in nature as well. This whole motion forward, again, is an uplifting that will allow for all the kingdoms to partake of this beneficial experience. Now, there's also, in terms of this, certainly we have to take into consideration aspects of change, disruption, and dismantling of old, unneeded, unnecessary aspects of our humanity so that new and proper interpretations of what is existing may come forward and find true expression and find right and proper proportion within our expression. And so things that are of a destructive nature oftentimes are, many individuals fear change and destruction, and they fear, again, this aspect of upheaval that is quite prevalent and evident in a lot of areas of human endeavor right now that are unfolding, that are allowing for change to take place. And again, many people actually are quite frightened of change because they get so caught up in what they're so comfortable with, and you get in that rut of ritual, and that seems like a comfortable place to stay, and you're so accustomed to the normalcy and the pattern and the sameness. It becomes very comforting and soothing. But that is a place of stagnation, and we have to understand, if we want to make real progress, that we have to move from points of crisis to points of crisis. And this idea of setting up a point of tension with a higher spiritual nature in an individual or in a group endeavor sets up these points of cleavage, and it sets up points of unrest and disruption. And so as there's a coming together, there are also things that are going to subsequently be falling to the wayside. And so as group potency becomes more intact and more viable and more readily acknowledgeable and potent, disruption takes place. And so the component aspects within the group will see disruption in their own individual expression, and this will be a falling away of unnecessaries, so that a more potent expression can take place from a group-focused endeavor. And so that's something to keep in mind, that as humanity moves forward, excuse me, and we have an opportunity for a new type of energy to make its way and make itself manifest into our human experience, we can take advantage of this upcoming energy and the knowledge that it's making its way into our realm of experience. And one particular aspect of that, when we break, again, when we consider the breaking down into the component aspects of energy into 7 distinct constituent parts that make up one whole totality, we can think of that in the unfolding of different racial qualities and different capacities through human unfoldment. And in our current opportunity, if we consider the so-called Aryan race, which is also sometimes known as the post-Atlantean age or race, and that it has to break down into its subsequent 7 parts or reflections, and then it's completed, and then a new dispensation of 7 will find its way into manifestation. And so as we complete this current cycle of 7, we find that we've already made our way through a good portion of the Aryan dispensation in the Indian, then secondly the Persian, third the Egyptian, Hebrew, Chaldean, Babylonian aspect of our dispensation, fourthly through the Greco-Roman, and currently the 5th that we are rapidly passing through as well, the Anglo-Saxon dominated aspect of the so-called Aryan race, and that we find ourselves fast moving into a 6th sub-race of the so-called Aryan race, and that this will allow for a whole another opportunity of unfolding to take place within humanity. Now, it's commonly regarded among esoteric writers and thinkers on these concepts, and those that have been able to intuit and wield some understanding about future unfolding, point to opportunities that are reflected in several aspects of our humanity. One would be in the American ideal of a melting pot, and that this melding or merging of an ideal under various ethnic groupings and comings together, this unity within a multiplicity is one example of this sixth subrace, so-called, and that most agree that it won't be a specific ethnicity per se, as these previous dispensations were, but that it will be more of a way of thinking, a state of mind that will embody, again, the qualities of synthesis and union that we can make use of through scientific means. Antahkarana, for instance, the term I spoke of earlier, that is essentially the theme of this show, this idea of this merging, this rainbow bridge, this synthetic outlook and approach to group work, but keeping one point in mind firmly, in that irrespective of how much we merge our consciousness with some point of union, some point of finality that represents for us some ultimate goal, some ultimate union with the divine, that even in these very high spiritual states of awareness and union and manifestation, that even in spite of these high gains, we still maintain our individual nature, and we still can consider ourselves looking out among a synthesis, within a synthesis, but with our own individual approach. And so that we can, in spite of our synthetic approach, we still maintain our individual nature that becomes a component aspect of a larger grouping. And it just goes to further accentuate the overall. It's just like adding different spices into a recipe, into some kind of a cooking mixture. The individual spices tend to retain their inherent qualities even within the overall, like pepper, for instance, or salt quality is going to retain its inherent nature even within the midst of this larger this congregation or this coming together. And so that's a point that I would like to emphasize in this idea of synthesis and this aspect of merging together. Now, there are also, again, other points to this merging together that I want to emphasize. As far as a merging of soul energy, now if we consider, again, that there are different aspects that amalgamate, that are played out through our human individual natures and group natures as well, but the personality nature has a specific energy per se, a ray energy or quality, a distinct quality, in the same sense that the soul nature has a distinct ray energy or quality that is unique to its essence or nature, and also our spiritual nature has its own ray expression. And so there's a constant wager of war for all practical purposes between these different ray types, and there's a working out that takes place within our lifetimes when we become more familiar with this differentiation, when we become more familiar with our duality, with our nature as animal and divine, and we can start to meld these energies into one collective effort, one, expression or one intent. But this is definitely, again, an idea of merging different energies. And this idea of synthesis also takes place in any group endeavor, because we're going to have different individuals coming together in a group. They're going to have their own different expressions, their own areas of expertise, and their own ideas as to how the group should proceed and progress. And so there has to be that merging and that melding and that understanding and that intuitive allowing that makes for merging, and that allows, again, for optimum potency, that allows for the different energies to come together for the greatest collective, working out. And so this is, again, something that ties into a scientific approach to group relations. And in the future, this will be definitely much more considered as to how groups can best work together. And this scientific understanding will be incorporated more so when groups are amalgamated so that best results can be achieved. And there will be more understanding of who can work with whom and what. Many aspects of this will come into being as far as merging together ethnic differentiations and different ethnic types, as far as their different approaches to life outlook, and how common ground can be derived from our differences. And this is part and parcel of the idea of group Antahkarana. Keeping in mind, this idea of Antahkarana is an idea of synthesizing the component parts. And in synthesizing the component parts of our humanity, that would entail synthesizing at some level of understanding the various the various governmental institutions from the different varying countries, and also the components that we find that are alive in the different cultures, and that are part and parcel of being born into a specific country under a specific racial or ethnic type would be better. We believe we are one race, but various ethnicities of one race. But to understand the point of view that somebody coming from, let's say, India would have, as opposed to somebody coming from Brazil would have, and how they would seek to come together on some kind of, whether that be a trade merger, whether that be deciding on educational ideas, any number of things that would be some purpose for people coming together. Some thought, as far as for achieving the best optimum benefits, some thought I feel should be put into considering these aspects of our individuality. And again, looking at relationships from a scientific approach, in that we can understand through our psychological means and other means how to, again, best merge our differences for, again, working together to get the best optimum results. And we can find that, again, expressing itself in different areas. It's going to be up to us as to how we choose to proceed and progress along those lines. I also want to mention individuals. Our individual expression can be kind of summed up to, one analogy would be that we are each individual tones, that our expression makes a tone, and that if we consider our personality ray nature in amalgamation with the soul nature and the spiritual ray nature, that these three aspects would make like a chord, and that chordal tone is an expression of our individuality. And so when we merge our individual tones with other tones of other individuals, there becomes a group harmony that can be akin to a symphony, in that each individual tone blends and melds to a larger vibrational outpouring, and that this is part and parcel of this idea of group work and group intent, that this synthetic merging takes place in order for energy to acquiesce or to meld and to work together in an aligning fashion. Excuse me, that's another good term. Alignment is another aspect too. When we align the different tones of the different individuals, there can be a merging together into one overall tone that is harmonious, again, in spite of the different various distinctions between the constituent members of the group. And so this is another idea of vibrating forth as an expression, and that we are constantly vibrating at some level, and some are more vibratory in their nature than others. Some are more still and dense in their nature than others. And this is part and parcel of this science of unfolding, this science of synthesis that allows a stimulating condition to take place, a stimulating impetus to stimulate this energy nature within ourselves and to start this merging of energies within the human vessel and this larger merging of energy out among, let's say, a small group, a community, a state, a nation, building on out from there, in that this idea of synthesis is the keynote, and fire is an esoteric symbol of that unity as far as the fire of the mind is concerned. And certainly we understand hearts afire with human need. When we tie these two expressions into one focused, flaming effort, then we find that the fire of intent can do much in order to illuminate, elucidate, and move with its focused intent. Move because, again, energy follows thought. And so as we gather and direct our intent in a focused manner, much can be accomplished. And the subsequent results of that merging will be evident to the individuals in the group endeavor, or individually in some instances as well, that we can acknowledge and size up the accomplishments from that intent, that endeavor. Now, excuse me, keeping in mind that the idea of our human unfolding, or a human expression of this Antahkarana, is based on merging our individual ray natures underneath the overall heading of one quality of this ray expression, which is the second ray of love wisdom. This is commonly considered to be the keynote or the key expression of our universal manifestation. Not just this planet, but the entire aspect of creation is under this magnetic component that is the keynote. The conditioning quality, the overall quality of our expression, is the aspect of love wisdom. And this overall idea of synthesis is what allows this merging, excuse me, of this lesser ray energy to amalgamate under this one heading of love wisdom, which is a very allowing and understanding and accepting type of energy that easily allows for these constituent parts, these different rays, to merge back in to this particular aspect, because the aspect of love wisdom has to do with the very key aspect of love wisdom, or love, is this uniting energy, uniting two or different aspects, a merging or a uniting. And that is the key component of love, and that is represented in the physical union between a man and a woman. But this merging that is represented in that way is a general keynote, again, of the quality or the characteristic of our expression of manifestation. And so that is our goal, if you will, to merge back underneath that quality. And so we, as different component aspects of the planetary consciousness, form essentially individual brain cells in the brain of our planet. And so as more individual brain cells are activated, stimulated, awakened, aware, what have you, of the greater energy exchange between the different brain cells, then we can understand our opportunity to work hand in hand with an unfolding of consciousness for the planetary, that ties in with the planetary unfolding of consciousness that's taking place right underneath our feet, in a sense, and really at all levels of manifestation. And we as humanity are part and parcel of that unfolding, because we are the intermediary kingdom between the larger unfolding of consciousness of the globe and the lower kingdoms in nature. And so we find ourselves tying these energies of the higher aspects with lower energies of the animal, animal, vegetable, and mineral kingdoms. And so we are ambassadors in that sense. And our intermediary place is very analogous to the intermediary aspect of the soul between the lower dense nature of man and our higher spiritual nature. And so soul energy and soul focus and our human expression or endeavor tie very intimately together. And so we can, the more we grasp that concept and the more we perceive of the scientific validity of this synthesis of yoga synthesis and these other means, the more it will become commonplace in the minds of men, and the more potency can be derived from this exercise of merging, synthesizing our intent in a group fashion, and how we, as activated individual brain cells of the brain of the planet, can cause a great unfolding of light energy. And when we look at contemporary science and their views of our human brain, we realize how little of the brain is used at any given time. Excuse me, but there are many more cells that are kind of lying dormant or what have you, that science is yet to really fully understand the nature of and to perceive their usefulness. And this is very much akin to what's taking place with the planetary expansion of consciousness, and that as each individual person becomes activated, they are like a living lighted link, excuse me, a living lighted brain cell within the planetary brain. And so the brain, as it becomes more fully activated, can be a more potent vessel. It can be a more potent vehicle for work. And so this is really, again, part and parcel of this idea of synthesis, the term Antahkarana, and how that is this term essentially that we can relate to in synthesis as a basis of synthesis for humanity and synthesizing our human nature with lower aspects of creation and higher aspects of creation, and that there's a totality or an overall synthetic merging, but again, keeping in mind that we still maintain our individual self-conscious inherent nature in spite of any larger group, coming together or amalgamations. Let me go ahead and grab a call and see what's going on this evening. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, man, peace and love. Peace and love.
You
man,
too, brother.
You sound like a hippie coming down off a 2-day high trip on some LSD.
Really? Well, I mean, that's certainly your prerogative. But I think that that's a better message from my estimation than a negative message or a message of fear or a message of separation or a message of, go fight, kill, or whatever the case may be. We have opportunities for taking advantage of a lot of good energy and a lot of good opportunities. It's just a matter of being aware of them and having the desire to take advantage. And not everybody wants to do that, and so that's certainly everyone's right to do what they choose. Certain people, coincidentally enough, though, are coming together under these general headings of unity, synthesis, and people at some base level are having a desire to meet and merge and meld their energies. And so you may not be privy to that or aware that that's taking place, but from my own understanding and what I've been involved in recently, I can attest to the fact that there is a definite area of interest in this city and elsewhere within certain individuals that it seems to be growing at a really exponential rate, in which more people are finding it desirable to meet and work together under a particular heading: synthesis, union, sharing, exchanging, and they're working in that fashion to negate and push away fear, separation, all of these insecurities that keep us limited. This is these concepts of synthesis are allowing, and they allow for opportunity for greater unfolding, and they allow for opportunity as opposed to limiting, because their fear and these other negative expressions are much more limiting, and we can be enacted and instigated by fear in some cases. So it has its place, but ultimately I feel fear should be relegated to its own place, and kind of like the symbolic imagery when you see the knight in armor with a dragon underfoot. That kind of is a symbolic relation of how we put our lower nature into check, or how we put negativity under the heel and keep it at bay. So it's really up to us. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm pretty good. I understand what you're saying, and it's just you're talking. I can't keep up. You know what I'm saying? I know what you're talking about, but it's.
Well, did you have a specific question that maybe I can help you?
First of all, I just tuned in, and I think it's good that Austin provides this outlet for people to talk on. But I really want to know what Antahkarana is.
Okay, let me break it down to more of its constituent components. Anta, or the root would be antar, A-N-T-A-R, which means interior or the inside aspect.
Like the soul?
Internal or the inner nature. Soul would be a decent aspect of it. Yeah, I guess you could say soul. Actually, that's not a bad one. Soul would probably be pretty adequate.
Anything, so.
Beg pardon?
Soul could be anything. It's just whatever.
True, but I mean, it would be a pretty good word to use in that example. And then karana means a cause or a principle or an origin. And so when you have Antahkarana, you have the concept of a synthesis, merging what's inside the soul nature, if you want to use that term, with the originating impetus, and that would be more akin to a will aspect or the spiritual nature of man, the kernel of humanity that is the highest spark of our conscious expression before we meld back into some larger, unity.
Oh, so it's our connection with the outside realm.
Well, the outside in the sense of
not here.
Well, in manifestation, there's a point where there is latency. There's only potential, and there's no real form. And then once you pass that point of latency, then you come into the world of form. Now, certainly there are forms that are much more refined than our physical body, because X-rays would be a type of form, and we can't really perceive of an X-ray, but yet it has a form. And anything that makes its way into manifestation, form nature, is part of the interior, so to speak, and then the cause, the karana aspect, would be that originating aspect before the energy finds its way into physical manifestation. So I don't know if that clarifies or further confuses the issue.
It kind of does. I mean,
but basically, we can make a merging with if we have the will to merge our individual wills with a larger expression of the will. It's very much exactly what took place in the gospel narratives when Jesus, through Christ, on the cross, said, "Not my will, but thine be done." That exact thing that's described by the term Antahkarana. It's a merging between those natures, between the physical, the soul nature, and the will aspect or the spirit, that pure kernel of our manifestation. And so that's as good an example of any, in my estimation, really the best example we have to follow. Although there is the Eastern counterpart, which is Antahkarana, which is a word that expresses that union, and that is really more so a science of the future. But I feel in order to get these ideas into the public, now is certainly good, because we can work from that seed thought to flowering forth the fuller understanding.
Fair enough.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Take care. Have a nice evening. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Just fine. Don't know where to start. Talking about early on about leaving fear and getting together people of different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you were saying, what's going on now, I think is a good example. There is a lot of fear with what's going on with the war,
mm-hmm.
and people's different outlooks on their beliefs.
Certainly.
And I do know that there's groups trying to get together, different religions trying
mm-hmm.
to get together
mm-hmm.
and learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of basically one part of what you're talking about.
It is, most certainly, yes.
Also, when you talk about the connection between, well, like the physical and also the lower part of man, the animal part of man, and yet also the spiritual part of man, that spirituality is the connection to what a lot of people would call God, Buddha, what that spiritual connection. It's almost like a parent and a child. There's
That's a very good analogy.
Pardon?
That's a very good analogy between a parent and a child. That's a great example.
It just seems, yeah. I mean, there's that connection, and it's just.
And if you have various children, I was going to say, if you have various children, if you have more than one child, they might sometimes squab and fight and what have you, and they're vying for the mother's attention or the father's attention, and that might be kind of akin to the different religions trying to say, no, me, and that's kind of what I'm getting at as well. Whether it be a religious merging of ideas or governmental or what have you, that just coming to a point of respect is key one, or step one, to have more group unfolding and just having respect for other ethnicities, other religions, things of that nature, and then trying to, from that point, maybe come together on an expression of common ground and say, hey, you guys believe this, I believe this, and coming in discourse and discussion and things like that.
Right, and I know that, I kind of brought in the religious, the different religion type of, that we have all over the world, but there are so many similarities in all of these, in all of our religions.
Agreed.
It's just amazing to me.
True, yes.
So that when I heard someone say, my God is your God, from, say, from a Christian to a Muslim or a Hindu to it really does make sense to me. I mean, people have, you can call it the, what were you calling, the where the thought came from? I mean, the original, I'm sorry, I was having a hard time explaining myself.
Like the unmanifest aspect, or
the
unmanifest or the latent aspect?
Yeah, where you said, like, for example, energy follows thought.
Right, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so say in the beginning there was what?
Okay, I'm going to let you go on that thought, but basically, in the beginning, okay, there was the word, but there had to be the thought before the word was uttered forth. There had to be that archetypal pattern, that the actual vibration of the word was patterned upon. If we want to speak, we have an idea in our mind as to what we want to say before we utter that expression, those words, and that kind of ties in. But overall, the idea is a synthetic approach, just trying to have a synthetic approach and having an appreciation for our shared differences. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Corey, how's it going?
Good, yourself?
Pretty good. Thanks for asking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that last caller, but she sure talked slow.
Well, some do, some don't. Some say I speak too quickly or too fast, so, it takes all kinds, I guess. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Corey?
Yes? Hello, yes?
Hi, I'm a first-time caller.
Yes?
I'm just so stunned.
Beg pardon?
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm a new...
Okay, well, if you want to call back and contribute, make a point, you're certainly welcome to. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Corey, how you doing?
Good, yourself?
Pretty good. I've read quite a bit about different religions, and it seems to me that all or most religions, they allege that there is a spiritual entity, God or creator or angelic beings or something over us that you can commune with.
Mm-hmm.
That you can actually yoga or hit, you can join up with these and share their consciousness, and they can educate you and uplift you. And it just seems to me, I mean, I've read pagan religions believe in Mother Earth,
Mm-hmm.
that you commune with her.
Mm-hmm.
Christianity believes communion with the Holy Ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Hinduism believes communion with yoga. I mean, that is their thing, is from Hinduism, and communion with Brahma.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know about Islam, if they believe in communion, but it seems to me that most religions do. But whenever it comes down to that, they want to pretend that the Holy Ghost of Christianity is different than the Brahma of Hinduism or the goddess, Mother Earth of paganism. But I believe this is all the same entity, and people have experienced it, and depending on what culture they were brought up in, they gave it a different name.
All right.
But it's really the same entity. There's only one entity. There's only one source of all life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you understand that, then you eat of the tree of life.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, then you eat of the tree of good and evil. And what that means is you look in the world and you divide it into two. And everything's in division from the tree of good and evil. It's either good or it's evil. Therefore, life is always in conflict when you eat of that tree.
Right.
If you eat of the tree of life, what you believe in is that there's one source for all life, and all of us emanate from that one source. We're not in conflict. We're in unity. You just have to appreciate our differences and, embrace one another. And to me, that's really the whole message of the Bible summed up.
Summed it up quite well. I'm in the Amen choir completely. It's great. I completely agree. Yes, I do feel that same stream of energy expresses itself in all the great religions under a different term. That's what it basically boils down to. But thank you for your great words. That was really pretty much how I would have summed it up. And, very similarly, definitely, I feel like that energy is similar to all the religions. And the sooner that can be appreciated and understood, the sooner we can get together and get to the real issues. So that's really up to us as to how much we understand or take the time to try to understand that. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Pal Lansing, get to the point.
Okay. The point being, I guess you're watching my show for some reason. Thanks for taking the time to view. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Okay. Sounds like the fly. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hi, how are you?
Yes, the issues I'm working on right now are about watching myself being judgmental.
Yes.
And I'm taking everything I can see, and when I see it in somebody else, then I can relate it back to myself. And I'm working on being tolerant. And those things are hard. I didn't, in a way, know that they were that hard. I didn't think I was judgmental, but, then I see that I am all the time. But I can be aware of it, and that kind of helps.
Oh, yeah, very much. I commend you. Is there anything else you care to add along those lines?
Oh, it's just, too, that when we can see, like, for instance, in our lives, we went through some bad times. At the time, it was very bad, but, when we get further down the road, then you see, well, okay, that was a very good lesson for me to learn in order to keep compassion.
Yes.
And it's like, if we don't know what pain is, then how do we know joy?
Very good point.
So it's all for a reason.
Those are very good points. Thank you for taking the time to call. I had a very similar conversation with someone right before I left to come to the show today, where some of those exact points were covered about, going through a bad experience and then finding the good out of it. That, things may seem bad at the time, but then looking back in hindsight, we can see, oh, that needed to happen so that this could happen and that could happen, and that this fuller expression can take place, and we can take advantage of it. So when we get caught up in the immediate negativity of a situation, we may sometimes lose sight of a greater opportunity that's ultimately going to take place. If you lose your job here, you may get a job over here that's just, so much better, things of that nature. So being aware that change can offer opportunity and not being fearful, that's a really key component. Hello, caller, you're on the air? The fly's back. It's trapped in the jar. Hello, caller, you're on the air?
Hello?
Hey, how are you?
Hello?
Yeah, you're there. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Does this is a show about religion, right?
No, I wouldn't say it's about, maybe spirituality.
Well, last like 3 or 4 callers have been about religion. Am I wrong?
something along those lines. Yeah, what's your comment?
My comment?
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yes, I'm listening.
Oh, okay. So I was just curious. Do fags get into heaven too?
Yes, they do. Did you hear about that? They certainly do. That's something that some people may not acknowledge or want to consider, or they may think that that's not the case. But yes, the sun does shine on everyone, irrespective of your whatever. So yes, a good person is a good person, irrespective of their sexual preferences. So something to consider. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, how are you?
I'm super. How are you?
Great. How may I help you?
I have been watching, and I really don't understand the whole meaning of this.
The meaning of? Okay. Oh, wow. I'm going to grab another call. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Okay, let's see here. Let me go ahead and do just a little bit of a brief recap and try to kind of recapture some of the ideas of what I was trying to get across earlier. Essentially, future expression of humanity is going to be more concerned with synthesis and coming together on common ground from various different aspects. And so the more we appreciate that, the more we're going to seek the means and the methods by which we can have a successful synthesis, either through group endeavor or individual expression along the lines of yoga, as I spoke of earlier. The yoga of synthesis, sometimes referred to as Agni Yoga, is one key component of that. Certainly, just coming together in group relations, or having the idea of selfless service to humanity. That can take you further than any single expression that I'm familiar with. If we just have that open, accepting, allowing, loving heart that compels us to want to reach out and help others. Keeping in mind that Mike Hansen needs volunteers, jot those numbers down and get a hold of him if you have some free time. He could certainly use your assistance with his endeavors to become County Constable Precinct 4. I want to remind folks to stay tuned to Access Television Tuesday nights at 10 on Channel 16 to view Jeff Contreras and Therefore I Am. Also, Reality Expander with Chris Athanas is every Thursday night at 10 p.m. on Channel 16. I'd like to thank my producer, Chris, for commanding the helm of the Starship Esoterica. And I would like to just encourage folks to kind of think about this group idea, this group synthesis, this group endeavor, and if it has any meaning whatsoever in your life, if this is anything that you're desirous of, if there's something inside you that's gnawing at you even just a little bit, that is making you curious about opportunities for group exchange, please consider what you can do to merge and synthesize and exchange our energies with others. We all can do much to alleviate a lot of problems and a lot of things going on if we just choose to get together and think about it that way. Thanks, Austin. Have a nice evening. Take care.